In the practice of being a demon slayer, those who join the Corps tend to have their reasons to fight, be it avenging their slain families, finding a common purpose or goal within the organization, or just feeling like they owe the world something and want to use their talents for the betterment of it. Though one member of the Corps doesn't know why he's there. A talented boy with his head in the clouds, the miniature mismaneuvering Merkaba Meister ministering mysterious malice, Muichiro Tokito, the Mist Pillar of the Demon Slaying Corp. This video contains spoilers up to the final arc in the manga of Kimetsu no Yaiba, so if you want to avoid spoilers, you have been warned. Muichiro Tokito is one of the most talented members of the Demon Slaying Corp, being not only a pillar, but a master of the Breath of Mist, and even inventing his own kata within that style. Along with this, he's the youngest member of the pillars at only 14 years of age, and has even achieved his pillar status within the first 2 months of training to be a demon slayer, a feat only rivaled by the stone pillar Himejima. And following his proper introduction in the Swordsmith Village arc, Muichiro would go on to be a major element in the story of Kimetsu no Yaiba, from his bond with Tanjiro to his relation to one of the upper 6 moon demons. But before we get too into that, let's understand the meaning behind his name and design. Starting first with his name, which Gutoge-sensei has actually made it a lot easier for me by making it plot relevant to his character. All praise to the Wani no Kami. Starting first with the family name, Tokito, which when broken down is comprised of the characters for to pass through and time. So altogether it can mean to pass through time, or essentially living in the now, which not only fits with Muichiro's own breathing style, as mist or fog is used to imply a passage of time within old Japanese works of art, but it also works well with his own initial listless nature, as he was just living day by day. But another interpretation of it is his family's direct blood relation to the progenitor of the breathing styles, Yoruichi, with Muichiro and his talents being described as a Yoruichi living in the now. And speaking of his talents, Muichiro's first name is in direct reference to it, as growing up his brother would tell him all the negative things that the Mu in Muichiro would be harmonious with, whereas in reality the Mu in Muichiro is the same character as the Mu in Mugen, or Infinity, referring to his infinite potential as a slayer. But along with that, when you combine it together with the Ichi in his name, which is harmonious with the Ichi and Yoruichi, you get unmatched or unparalleled. And then the Ro means child, so altogether, Muichiro means the unparalleled child of infinite potential. And Muichiro's own design matches up well with the meaning of his name and his foggy memory. First, with his long hair being described as seaweed-like. Seaweed is symbolically tied to joy and specifically youth, along with being symbolically tied to one's true self, as it rests beneath the surface. And Muichiro's own youth is tied directly into his true self, which does rest beneath his subconscious. And his appearance is actually a big part of that. Along with this, Muichiro's oversized Slayer uniform is designed in a way to give the impression of a child wearing an adult's uniform, so that they could demonstrate how young he was in comparison to everyone else there. But it was also intentional in universe, as Muichiro chooses to wear an outfit like this, as it masks his movement, making it difficult for his opponents to read him, with the baggy nature of his pants and sleeves fogging up the view of his joints, which in turn plays into the breathing style that Muichiro chose to master, that being Breath of Mist, which is a sword fighting style that works on masking one's movement to mimic the opaqueness of mist or fog, and seems to combine the elements of its father style, Breath of Wind, with the calmness of Breath of Water. This all comes together into a style that seemingly draws influence from the real-life sword fighting style of the Mizuguchi-ha Itoryu, an offshoot of one of the oldest Japanese sword fighting styles of the Itoryu, or One Sword School. It was developed by Mizoguchi Shinigoemon Masakatsu, and while a lot of the katas within the Mizoguchi-ha tend to be very similar in nature, it's the movements of this branch of Itoryu that the Breath of Mist draws the most from, as both styles are all about positioning and movement being as important as the sword swing, with the strongest of Muichiro's techniques usually placing him behind an already beheaded opponent in a similar way that Mizoguchi-ha attacks and would striking the opponent's back. Breath of Mist also has its own unique identity, existing long enough that Kokushibo recognized it instantly, and those who use the style also get their own colored Nichiren blade, with it turning a tealish blue shade, likely as a way of showing the melding of water and wind. Then for Muichiro's own Nichiren blade, it seems to be personalized with a hilt that is seemingly in reference to the Kyogoku clan, a powerful clan of samurais that were deemed outsiders by the Tokugawa shogunate. Though when it comes to the Breath of the Mist, it's the katas that hold their own unique meaning to themselves. So let's go through each kata to understand the meaning, with the core themes of Breath of the Mist being creation. Connection to creation mythos is given Muichiro's own connection to the creator of all Slayer styles. Starting first with the first kata, Low Cloud Distant Haze, which is a move where the user steps forward with a powerful thrust, similar in nature to Breath of Water's 7th kata, Drop Ripple Thrust, but without the ripple effect of that specific style's attack. And while the name Distant Haze plays into how the thrusting nature of the attack puts the attack itself away from the user, the lower clouds translates roughly to Suten, which is another name for the Japanese god of water, Suijin, who would make sense to be more tied to water breathing. It could be in reference to how water breathing has sort of an influence over mist breathing, along with referencing the demon that Muichiro was fighting when he used this attack, as Suijin is known for its relation to water, fish, and fishermen, which relates perfectly to the demon that he was fighting, who, in a way, could be seen as a twisted version of Suijin himself. Next we have the second kata, 8-Layered Mist, which the user unleashes 8 slashes in rapid succession right on top of one another, though the amount of slashes can likely exceed 8, as the character used can also mean many, so it could also be pronounced as Many-Layered Mist. And this is seemingly in reference to the creation myth of Japanese lore, and more specifically, Oyoshima, or the Great Country of 8 Islands, which is the name given to Japan in that creation mythos. And then you have the third kata, Scattering Mist Splash, which is an attack where the user reflects or repels projectiles by slashing in a single circular motion. The attack name is likely in reference to the same creation mythos for Japan, in which Izanagi, one of the creator gods, split the swirling fog of the world below him with his heavenly jeweled spear. It was then drenched in seawater which splashed onto the ground below, creating the island mass known as Japan. From there we have the fourth kata, Shifting Flow Slash, where the user readies their blade and strikes their target in a quick single slash at an extreme speed. And while this kata is more basic and doesn't have any real direct meaning, this is a great place to interject that the speed-based katas of Breath of the Mist are likely based on the Japanese kasumi, or fog cloud design, as it's often used in art to depict a passage of time within a piece, hiding the movements of that time from the viewer. This is done in the same way that the fog of Muichiro's own attacks cloud his own movements. And then we have the fifth kata, Sea of Clouds and Haze, where the swordsman dashes forward and unleashes a barrage of slashes that cover a wide area, all designed in a way to mask the location of the sword until the very last second. And it seems to be in reference to the origin of the world in the Shinto faith, where its original state was a sea of clouds and haze swirling around before it was severed by Izanagi. Next you have the sixth kata, the Moon Obscuring Mist, which is when the swordsman lunges into the air and rotates upside down, sending a series of countless slashes downwards, similar in practice to the Breath of Wind's ninth kata. Now this name seems to be in reference to a spring kigo, or Japanese seasonal word, that being the aboro, which is a summer mist that tends to cover the moon in the sky during warm summer nights, with this attack having Muichiro take the role of the moon, striking down at the unexpected ground below, which is blinded by his fog. Though, interestingly enough, aboro is actually referenced fully in Muichiro's own final kata, this being the seventh kata, Obscuring Clouds, or in Japanese directly, aboro. It's a technique that was originally created by Muichiro, in which the user drastically changes the tempo of their movements to confuse or disorient their targets. Or to put it simply, when they show themselves, their speed will appear as if they are extremely slow and easy to hit, but in reality, what they're hiding is that in a blink of an eye, they can be anywhere within their attack's range, with Muichiro being able to reach speeds that outclass the tracking abilities of an Upper Moon demon in a blink of an eye. The technique itself resembles the form of a rolling summer mist that envelops an entire area in a shrouded fog. Then, much like the final strike of Dead Calm, Muichiro calmly severs the head of his target in a swift single motion before they even realize what's happened. Now, as I mentioned with the sixth kata, Obscuring Clouds is another take on aboro, Goro, with Muichiro taking the role of the fog itself, obscuring everything on the ground with his movements. And in Muichiro taking up both the role of the sky and ground, this could play with two of the gods of Japanese mythos with a connection to fog, this being Ame-no-Sagiri and Kuri-no-Sagiri, the deities of both earthly and heavenly fog. Though beyond just his mastery of Breath of the Mist to the point that he created his own kata, Muichiro is also the first of the pillars to awaken to a Slayer mark, which takes the form of mist clouds rolling in on both sides of Muichiro's face, with the clouds themselves feeling in reference to the traditional Japanese pattern called Taichiwaki, which symbolizes rising steam, and the marks only appearing on the body when it reaches about 39 degrees Celsius or higher makes sense given that mist and steam are kind of connected, and you need the heat to awaken to your Slayer mark. The Taichiwaki is also a design that was normally worn by people of high status, and given his relation to Yoruichi, Muichiro would be considered someone of high class to people within the Slayer Corps, which we actually see a part of with his Kasugi Crow, Ginkgo, who is very proud to be serving under Muichiro and even brags about his history to anyone who will listen. Though they are pretty spoiled and look down on other Slayers for not being as good as Muichiro, they also don't allow him to have any pets as it would take attention away from her. Also, the name Ginkgo essentially means Silver Child, or can be read as Silver Spoon, which is a common insult thrown at people born into wealth or respected bloodlines, which, in a way, Muichiro would be considered that thanks to his bloodline. Though all this connection to his bloodline and the moon actually runs a little bit deeper than just some mythos connected to the style, as while Muichiro is a descendant of Yoruichi, the origin of sun breathing, he is also related to the first upper moon demon, Kokoshibo, the user of the Breath of the Moon, who in a lot of ways mirrors Muichiro's own journey as a person and who he used to be. Kokoshibo being this cold and collective swordsman whose talent is unrivaled in his own organization. They're also both surviving ends of twin brothers, with Kokoshibo being his oldest and Muichiro being his youngest. Though it is in their interactions that we see how much Muichiro has changed as a person, as not only do we see him emote and care for others more, but he's also willing to fight to his very last breath in order to save his teammates. From losing an arm and a leg to literally being cut in half, Muichiro never quits, as a lot of his power comes from his drive to protect those in need, which is a saying that his father lived by and even died by, though it was that loss of life that tore Muichiro's family apart, as from that point on he was raised by his older twin brother Yuichiro, someone who, unlike Kokoshibo, let his harsh tongue do the speaking, cruelly bullying Muichiro for his kind-hearted ways. Though Yuichiro's cruelness came from a place of confusion and anger, believing that everyone in the world was trying to take advantage of the only thing that he had left, his younger brother. Even going out of his way to tell off Kaguya, the headmaster of the Demon Slaying Corps' wife, believing that their organization was just another group of people looking to take advantage of his family. Though one night, a demon broke into their home when they left the door open at night, and in an attempt to protect his family, Yuichiro lost his arm, and quickly his life started to fade as well, which sent Muichiro into a blind rage, which allowed him to fully overwhelm a demon without the need of a Nichiren blade, breathing technique, or even the sun. Though the battle left his body bloody and dying, he returned to his brother, and for the first time, Yuichiro was praising him, praying for his safety, though his wounds would begin to take effect and Muichiro himself would begin to die as well. And as he laid there overnight, Muichiro would drift in and out of consciousness, watching as nature began to reclaim his brother's body, and soon would come to take his as well. Though Kaguya's family would return in the morning and rescue him from the situation, and in his recovery, Muichiro found his memories of those moments clouded in a hazy fog. The only remaining memory of his life before demon slaying was his hatred of demons. Though in a sort of tragic twist, Yuichiro survives in Muichiro's broken state, as almost subconsciously, Muichiro's cold demeanor mimics that of his brother's cruel tongue, as he demeans people, telling them that their time is worth less than his, and he violently assaults those who stand in his way. Though Tanjiro can sniff out that Muichiro isn't inherently cruel, and his words carry no weight to them. He lives life almost like a machine in this state. And it's through his struggles in the Demon Slaying Corps and the friends that he met along the way, Muichiro was able to remember who he was, reigniting the flame in his heart and preventing him from becoming a cold demon like Kokoshibo. And for his efforts, Muichiro was able to see his brother again, and in a final moment the twins reunited in the afterlife, afterlife, Yuichiro angrily telling Muichiro not to die, and Muichiro replying that he no longer had regrets to hold him to this world, and that he died in a way that saved as many friends as he could. To him, his death wasn't pointless, and Yuichiro accepted this, and the two embraced and fully passed on together. And what makes this scene really hit is that the two of them are surrounded by falling ginkgo leaves, which is a metaphorical symbol of inner peace, but it can also be used as a sign for the end of summer and beginning of fall. And with the coming fall, there's no longer a need for the spring mist that is the breath of the mist. And with Yuichiro sort of being a symbol of what drove Muichiro to becoming a master of Breath of the Mist, with both of them passing on, it becomes sort of a beautiful metaphor for the disappearance of the Kasumi Mist, with its planned return at a happier time in a more joyous world. Muichiro is one of the most talented characters in the entirety of Demon Slayer, not only being the youngest of the pillar in the core, but achieving his status in little to no time at all. Along with this, he's the first pillar to awaken to his Slayer mark, create a red Nichiran blade, and is the only character to single-handedly defeat an Upper Moon demon on his own. He is a perfect example of how you can both show and tell someone something about a character. And all of this talent, along with his own character arc, skyrocketed Muichiro in popularity among fans. He went from 29th place in the first popularity poll to 3rd favor overall in the second. Gatoge really knocked it out of the park with this character, and I hope he eventually gets a Gaiden-like story similar to Rengoku or Giyu, especially anything that shows us where he learned Breath of the Mist to begin with. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did and want to see more videos like it in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/medinotthebadguy. Pledging any little bit helps keep this channel flowing as smoothly as it does, and if you want to clear the fog of your own mind, you can do so by buying a copy of Shimoneta, A Boring World Where the Concept of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist at buyshimoneta.com.